Hello, how are you doing? I want to make a fun video today. At least I hope it'll be fun, and I hope you'll find it fun as well. But I think it also might be a slightly torturous video in the decisions that I have to make, because I want to pick out my 10 favorite books from the past 5 years. And this is slightly a celebration for me because as of last month, I have been on booktube for 5 years. I can't believe it's been that long. I don't know where the time is gone. But you know, at the end of every year, like lots of readers and certainly lots of booktubers, I make lists of my favorite books from the past year, and I always pick out 10 books. And so for the past 5 years, I have 50 books from that. So I have scurried around my bookshelves and gone collecting books, because I try to save all of my favorite books from the past year, because I do want to go back and reread them at some point. And I have picked out 50 books. And so here are all of those books. I have almost all of them. There's only a couple which I couldn't find copies of because I might have like lent out to somebody, and if I have lent them out to you, then please give them back. But yeah, I have most of them here. And I think it'll be an interesting exercise, as you know, a way of thinking about like, well, what books of these I might have like loved at the time, but might have slightly faded into the background since, and some of them will probably really stand out for me still, and I'll, you know, really cling to and want to say like, yeah, I think this is one of the most incredible books from the past 5 years, or at least what I have read. And you know, and this of picking out 10 books like this, I think it's my own kind of, you know, if I was a book prize and I had a whole big group of books like this and had to pick and choose between all of them what I think are the best of the best, then this would be my choices. The sort of Lonesome Reader Award for books, which is going to obviously be a very subjective thing, you know, unlike book prizes, which I think strive for a kind of objectivity, whether it's the Booker Prize picking out the finest fiction, or it's picking out the best book written by a female author for the Women's Prize, or if it's the most innovative book from the past year for like the Goldsmiths Award, or just like a book that you think is a really great read and you would want to put on anyone's hand, like the Costa Book Awards. I mean, that's how they specify what their winners are. Since I was a judge on it, that's one I was really thinking about. And you know, and all these are books that I would definitely hope that anyone would give a chance on reading, and I hope everyone would enjoy. But some of them are definitely ones that I would be very selective about who I would give these books to. There are certain books like that I think really personally affect us in really meaningful ways, and these are ones that really exemplify, I think, who I am and are sort of expressions of what I most value in what I read. And so I'm aware that there are some viewers that have probably been watching my channel for the past 5 years, and there are other viewers that are slightly newer to my channel, and so hopefully this will give you some idea of what I really value in what I read. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to go through each year and look at those 10 books from that year, and I'll pick out from each of those piles my top books and ones that I don't want to get rid of, and put those aside, and do that for each of the years. And then I'll have a pile of books, and from that I will select my 10 favorite. And I think that will be where it gets really painful, of books that I don't want to sort of let go of. And of course it's not really letting go of them because they're still here, but you know, it's for the purposes of this, of just like making a list of 10 books, it's just sort of a fun thing to do, as well as slightly torturous. So I'm going to go through each year, starting all the way back in 2016 with these 10 books. And I have all of them, all 9 of them. There's one I don't have, which is Under the Udala Trees by Chinelo Okparanta, which, yeah, I just don't know where my copy of that has gone. And I was talking about it so much at the time, so I don't know what happened to it, but yeah, I lost it somewhere along the way. And yeah, these these are the other 9 books. And so there's The Tidal Zone by Sarah Moss, and I think this is where my love of Sarah Moss's writing developed, and I think that happened for a lot of people when this book came out. And yeah, really powerful personal story about family life and loss, and yeah, so moving and well done. And Do Not Say We Have Nothing by Madeleine Thien. I think this was one of my favorites to win the Booker Prize in the year that it was nominated, and is such a powerful story about national identity and family life and multiple generational stories, which I absolutely love, and is so beautifully written, and yeah, such a powerful book. And The Man Without a Shadow by Joyce Carlos. You'll notice there's quite a lot of Joyce Carlos books on this, since she is my favorite author. And yeah, such an intriguing story about a man that only has short-term memory, and a female scientist that falls in love with him and has a relationship with him. And yeah, such an intriguing book. And The Underground Railroad by Colson Whitehead, which really sticks out with me. There are some books which really are based, sort of, your memories of it are so attached to the time that you read it in. And I read this right before the presidential election, when Trump became president. And so my memories of it are really tied to that period. And I think my reading experience was really influenced by my emotions surrounding that period. And also I've just been watching the new series of The Underground Railroad. I don't know if any of you have watched that as well. And but yeah, it's really difficult watching, because yeah, there's some really violent, horrible things that happen in the story. But yeah, is a really amazing adaptation of this novel, which has such an incredible concept to it. I think it's one of the most conceptually brilliant books out of all of these books. There is Solar Bones by Mike McCormack, which is this incredible sort of stream of consciousness type novel about an Irish man, as you follow him over the course of the day and you discover things about him and his past and his family, but is this wonderful sort of observational book looking at his life in this very poetic and powerful way. Yeah, such an incredible novel, deserves to be better known. And another Irish book is Dinosaurs on Other Planets by Danielle McLaughlin, which is a collection of short stories all about a number of different aspects of Irish life, including some stories that are about the financial crash in 2007 in Ireland, and yeah, and other stories of Irish life. And yeah, such an incredible, moving story collection. And there's the Gustav Sonata by Rose Tremaine, this incredible, delicate, beautiful story about a man's life and his love for another man, and yeah, and so this is historical novel, giving a really interesting perspective on this history, looking at yeah, sort of around World War II, but also, yeah, a very personal story, and made me really fall in love with Rose Tremaine's writing. And this spiral bound copy, which I don't have a finished copy for, the reason that this was an advanced copy of Ali Smith's novel Autumn, and I wanted to save this in particular rather than getting a finished copy, because she signed it to me, and she made a little a little drawing of a pink fairy armadillo in this, because I had this wild conversation with Ali Smith once all about pink fairy armadillos, and I don't know why we had this big long conversation about them, which are real things and real creatures, but yeah, so she drew this in it. And then actually in a later novel in the series, she actually mentions a pink fairy armadillo, and she told me once when I saw her when that book was coming out that she put that in there because of me, which is a massive compliment, and yeah, so flattering. But yeah, such a brilliant novel of the time, really capturing that period of that Brexit era in England that I was living through, and capturing the emotions and mood of the country in such an incredible incredible way and was the start of an incredible cycle of novels going through the seasons and capturing our current times. And there is The Lonely City by Olivia Laing, which is a nonfiction book, which is sort of partly a memoir about her experiences living alone in the city, but also reflecting on figures from the past, some artists and writers and thinkers that have experienced and expressed ideas about loneliness in different ways through their art. And I found it such a meaningful and powerful book, and has, really stuck with me. So going through these 10 books, like just going on a very immediate emotional response of books that I want to keep with me and consider for my favorites, I would pick out these books, as well as Under the Udala Trees, which is an incredible sort of coming of age story and realization of the character's sexuality and finding her place in society. But it's slightly awkward because I don't have a physical copy of that to put here with this. But also include Solar Bones and Underground Railroad and Autumn. So these are the 4 books I'm going to set aside for now to consider for the final. Next, going to 2017, there are these 10 books which really stood out for me. So there is Dear Friend, From My Life to Your Life by Yiyun Lee, which is this incredible reflection on an individual and her relationship with her feelings of depression and but also her relationship with reading and writing and writers, in some cases her actual relationship with writers, and discussing those feelings, and was so relatable and powerful and made me really fall in love with Yiyun Lee's writing and want to read more of her books. And then there's Such Small Hands by Andreas Barba. It's an incredibly powerful short novel all about childhood, an incredibly creepy novel, like one of the most disturbing and unsettling books I've read for a long time, and that's really stuck with me. There is Tin Man by Sarah Winmin, which was a lot of people's favorites, and have a lot of readers have like such passion for this book. I'm sort of holding it up the wrong way. It's difficult to read the writing on the what's it called? This bit of the book. The spine of the book. Yes, I'm a reader. I know about books and things like this. But yeah, it's an incredible love story and historical novel following over the course of like a generation, and such a moving book. There is The End We Start From Megan Hunter, which is incredible debut, very short novel, very original take on a dystopian novel, and flooding in London and sort of fleeing from that and survival with a child, and about the process of motherhood during this sort of dystopian experience. It's an incredible book. The Parcel by Anosh Irani, which is one of the most heartbreaking but also beautiful novels I've read in a long time, all about, I'm told from the perspective of a hijra in India, and who has the very tragic and horrible job of trying to induct a girl into a life of prostitution. So yeah, an incredibly heartbreaking story about very difficult subject matter, but which is handled so well and gives such an amazing insight into this whole area of society, which is often shrouded in secrecy. And so I think is a very like important book, as well as an impactful and moving and just a tremendous read. There is also Winter by Ali Smith, where she continues with her cycle in the seasons, following a kind of ghost story as well as a Christmas gathering, and is a play on Dickens' A Christmas Carol, as well as telling a very unique family story, and is just such an enjoyable and absorbing story, as well as one that is also reflecting on our current time periods, or the time period in 2017. So it's like an amazing historical document, as well as a really innovative novel. There's When I Hit You, or Portrait of a Writer as a Young Wife, by Meena Kandasamy, which is a very powerful novel about domestic abuse. I think one of the most powerful books I've read about domestic abuse ever, and is really unforgettable in relating this experience and claiming how the character like is victimized, but she doesn't see herself as a victim, and the experience of being characterized is that by the wider population and sort of assumptions that are made about her, and so yeah, it's an incredibly powerful book. Freedom by Neel Mukherjee, which is an incredible story about family life, but is also capturing the feeling of the state of a nation in India, and looking at these different layers of society and the politics of the time, and so yeah, it's a very, very powerful book. There is also another novel by Joyce Carlos, one of her chunkier, more recent books, A Book of American Martyrs, which is an incredibly original take on the issue of abortion, and looking at from two very different sides of the argument, and over the course of two generations of two fathers embroiled in this argument, and their daughters, and following that perspective over time, and yeah, so looking at all different sides of this debate and dramatizing it in a very moving story. And then there is also Lincoln in the Bardo, by George Saunders, which is one of the most innovative books, I think, in out of all these 50 books. It's such an incredible story that combines narrative as well as sort of scripted play. It's sort of scripted like a play, but also includes historical documents, some real historical documents and others fictionalized historical documents, and combines it all together to tell this story that includes a lot of ghosts and specters, as well as the historical figure of Abraham Lincoln and his grief over the death of his son, and is just such a powerful book. I remember, like, when I read this, I thought this is going to win the Booker Prize that year, and it did go on to win that. And I wish I'd like made a video talking about how I thought I was going to win the Booker Prize, because I was proved right in that. And I remember arguing with some people online about this, like other bookish people that were like, no, this doesn't have a chance of winning the Booker Prize, and I was proven right. Not that I like to wag my finger. Well, I obviously do like to wag my finger a bit, but yeah, it's just such a brilliant book, and one that has stuck with me so much as an amazing experience. So out of these 10 books, the 4 that I'm going to sort of keep and cling to for now are these 4 of Lincoln in the Bardo, the Parcel, Such Small Hands, and Winter, because yeah, just my immediate emotional response is like, I don't want to let these books go. I think they are so amazing. Next, going back to my 10 favorites from 2018, at the top here we have Washington Black by S.A. Adujin, telling the life of a slave that becomes a scientist, and his many adventures traveling around the world doing that. I should show that because it has such a beautiful, amazing cover, and was my favorite, I think, to win the Booker Prize that year, in that it was nominated. Such a great book. There is Ghost Wall by Sarah Moss, which is such an incredible, slender story about a girl and her family that get involved in this anthropological experiment, which goes very wrong, and yeah, following her experiences over the course of a weekend. I remember talking about with readers at the time, and somebody described it as a perfect novel, and I really think of it as like that, is such powerful story which really captures the meaning and story of the nation at that time. And there's Sight by Jesse Greengrass, which is a novel that I did make a whole video saying like, oh, this is going to win the Booker Prize that year, which I was slightly it was sort of tongue-in-cheek. I didn't really think it would, though I was hoping it would. And I remember one reviewer responding to it at the time, saying like, I don't know why this Oates is being like touted as like a favorite for the Booker Prize, and I felt that like that was almost like a personal attack on me, since I was the one that was like, this is gonna win. But yeah, it's an incredible story about motherhood, but also looking at the history of the body, and at different sort of scientific experiments on the body over time, but also, yeah, this personal perspective of a woman's body as it changes going through the course of a pregnancy, and so powerful. And there is Circe by Madeleine Miller, which is just such an incredible, enjoyable experience, and such a shiny cover of telling the story of Circe from mythology, from her perspective, and was one of the leaders of all of these retellings of mythology that we've been getting over the years, and it's such a great story. There's also one classic novel, which I don't often include in my favorites, but I loved reading this so much, which is Memento Mori by Muriel Spark, and is such like a darkly comic novel about a group of older people who start receiving phone calls telling them that they're going to die, and so has this slightly sinister edge, and there's this mystery of who is making the calls, but is also a very playful look at old age, and looking at that whole experience, and is such an enjoyable read. And I read this aloud to my partner over a road trip, and so my experience of it is really strongly tied to us going on this trip, and me reading the entire novel aloud. There is also Women Talking by Miriam Taves, which is such a moving story about a group of women trying to escape from this really horrible situation of living in a community which is so restrictive, and where they find that they have been violated in a horrible way, but it's also, this community is the only one that they've ever known, so it's the decision about whether to go out into the wider world and take a chance on that, or to stay in this community and try to make compromises or try to make it work in some way, and it's such a powerful story. There's also Fire Sermon by Jamie Quattro, which is the story of an affair and a relationship, but also an individual struggling with their ideas and religious beliefs, and how to reconcile that with these very powerful emotional sexual experiences she's having. And yeah, such an incredible story. There's Problems by Jade Sharma, an author that died sadly far too early. She was quite young when she died, and is an incredible coming of age story all about the difficult translation into adulthood. And I sort of think of it as a sort of modern day like Holden Caulfield type character, sort of Catcher in the Rye, that sort of experience of young adulthood and young individual trying to find their place in the world, and all of the messy experiences they go through. Such a moving novel. There's also Swan Song by Kelly Greenberg Jeffcott, incredible story about Truman Capote and the novel he was writing about society women, and giving all of these different women's perspectives about that whole occurrence. And so yeah, it's all about this sort of bitchy literary community and high society life. So it was an incredibly fun and enjoyable read, but also really insightful one, I think, about the issue of friendship and what we make in our improvised families, and how those can fall apart in a really tragic way. There's also the Joyce Carlos's novel, Hazards of Time Travel, which I think is an incredibly inventive story, which is kind of a dystopian story, but also a historical novel, and looking at history and sort of alternate histories in a really unique way, and one that looks at sort of wider society, but also is a very, I think, personal story for Joyce Carlos herself, going back to a time period when she was growing up, and looking at that through a really different critical eye, and through this issue of sort of time travel, like using using that device, and so I thought it was really powerful in that way. Although my memories of this are really tied to an experience when I went to a book event, and a stranger came up to me and said, without any greetings or saying hello, just said, "Oh, what do you think of Joyce Carlos's most recent novel?" And I was sort of like taken aback, and so then gave my thoughts about it. But then he said very dismissively, like, "Oh, I thought it was like a young adult novel," and then turned and walked away, and that was the extent of the conversation. and I love meeting people who watch my videos or read my blog in person, but if you do see me, please do like try to have some normal human cordiality, like maybe say like, "Hi, I've watched your videos, or I've read your blog," and because that was just such a weird, off-putting experience. I mean, and having that kind of encounter was really strange, and I don't think many people would do that. That's probably a sort of rare occurrence that happened, but yeah, I just wish people would maintain some kind of civility and remember that I'm a real person, not just this like thing on a screen that you can sort of put your opinions on. But anyway, this is, I think, such an interesting novel for all the reasons I was talking about. So looking at these 10 books, I think I'm going to have to get slightly tougher in my decisions now because, otherwise I'm going to have a really big pile at the end. And the two I'd pick out probably are Washington Black and Ghost Wall, because, they are such incredible books. And in Washington Black in particular, I remember a scene from it so vividly where the main character goes underwater. He's wearing this underwater suit and feels this sense of liberation in this underwater space, which he isn't able to in his normal life. And I thought that was so powerful and beautiful. And there are certain scenes from books you read which just really stick with you, like even years after you read them. And that's definitely one for me. So I want to keep these two books for now. Right, on to 2019 and my 10 favorites from that year. And you can see already Lucy Ellman is sticking out quite prominently from this big group of books, and I'm unintentionally revealing my slightly unattractive work computer that's behind all of these books. But anyway, so these are my 10 favorites. There's The Years by Annie Ernaux, which is basically a nonfiction book and kind of memoir, but I think also kind of fictionalizes some aspects of her experience and her life, and is not just like a memoir of an individual's life, but also captures a whole society in a state of transition, looking through a subjective perspective and sort of admitting that, and this book just was such a revelation for me, and gave me such a different way of looking at history through a personal perspective, but also sort of social history, and it was such an incredible book that it's just stuck with me so strongly. There is Constellations by Sinead Gleason, which coincidentally also gives me that sense of like personal but also social history, looking at through her personal experiences, through a number of like memoirist essays to do with her body, because she's experienced a number of different illnesses in her life and her experiences with that, but also growing up in Ireland and the responses to her and the different treatments she was forced to receive because of these health issues that she had, says so much about the wider society, and it's such a powerful book and has such a beautiful cover to it. There is also This Brutal House by Niven Govindan, which is an incredible look at the drag scene in New York City at a particular time, through the experiences of a number of different drag mothers, but also in a number of different houses and their protest against the disappearance of some of their children, some of their chosen children for their houses, but also through the experience of one of those children and their mixed feelings about growing up in these drag houses and, or becoming fully rounded person in these drag houses, and yeah, such a unique take on this community and these experiences that I think it's such a powerful book. And there's The Big Chunkster of Ducks Newburyport by Lucy Ellman, which is just such an amazing epic book and very divisive. You know, there's been lots of videos here on BookTube for and against this book, and I'm sympathetic with both sides, but I come down on the side as a massive fan of this book, and I made a big long video about it, as well as making cinnamon rolls for the first time, because the main character in this makes cinnamon rolls and is following her stream of consciousness through the day, and so is capturing the preoccupations of our current time period as well, but you know, through this very personal perspective, as well as, you know, the experience of a mother, like fearing for her children and the state of her family and being able to get health care and all these so many different issues, but does so in a really comic and entertaining way. At least I was entertained for all 1,000 whatever pages of it. I just found it completely compulsive reading. There is Girl, Woman, Other by Bernardine Evaristo, the joint Booker winner, but the real Booker winner of that year, and of telling the story of a number of different women in different states of their life through different time periods, going back and forth between their perspectives. And what is so powerful, I think, about it is how it shows the relationship between all these different women, and how you get such a different perspective on their lives, from their interior perspective, but then their perspectives on each other and how it rotates between those, and is such an amazing look at a community and a nation. Is so amazing, and yeah, well deserves all the attention that it gets. There's Paul Takes the Form of a Mortal Girl by Andrea Lawler, which is such an amazing story, and one book that really hit me personally and that I connected with so strongly, and that has really stuck with me, partly because it's a kind of contemporary story of me, that it tells a coming of age story in a time that I grew up in, so I really related to it in that way, but gives such a unique take on gender from a character that is able to switch their genders, like physically switch their genders back and forth, and has a number of different sexual experiences from both genders, and so is a really playful look at this whole issue, but also, yeah, so powerful in how it tells this story, and so innovative and like dirty and fun as well. There is Underland by Robert McFarlane, an incredible nonfiction book where the author travels to all these different subterraneous zones in the world to look at the changing state of our worlds, but also the changing state of our society and scientific advancements. And it's such a beautiful story. I mean, his writing is so gorgeous, and how he tells his story and connects these things which wouldn't necessarily see the connection at first, and has such a beautiful, amazing cover to it as well. There's The Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead, another book by Colson Whitehead, and it's such a powerful story about, well, an individual's life, but then a larger group of people that are imprisoned, and looking at the state of this prison and how it's connected with all these racist attitudes of the time, and I thought was such a powerful story. There's Damien Barr's You Will Be Safe Here, which is looking at two different stories in two different time periods in South Africa, so it sort of gives a really unique portrait of the country, but also changes in society and a different look at masculinity over time through these two very different stories, and connects these two stories in a surprising and really intriguing way. So yeah, this is a book that's really stuck with me. And Joyce Carlos' novel of that year, My Life as a Rat. And so I always say, like, it's not necessarily that I instantly put Joyce Carlos' book in my favorite books every year, but I think each of her novels that she's been publishing over the past 5 years has been so unique and powerful on its own that I think it really like deserves a place, and is like stuck out for me as one of my favorites of this year, and of that year, of any year. And this story tells the story of a girl that makes a very crucial decision early in her life, to tell the truth about an incident that she witnesses, a racist incident, and then the consequences of that, how she's sort of ousted from her family because of that, and then following her life going forward and how she's able to survive and carry on past this very traumatic incident. Now, looking at these 10 books, this book is so tricky because a lot of these are more in my recent memory and have really stuck with me, and so I want to hold on to a number of them, including The Years and Girl, Woman, Other and Ducks Newburyport and You Will Be Safe Here, which is a book that I think really deserves more attention because it's such a powerful book. And the same goes for Paul Takes the Form of a Mortal Girl, because it's such an incredible, unique story like none I've read before. So I'm gonna hold on to 5 for the moment. Now, getting to our most recent times of 2020 and my 10 favorites from that year, so I'll just pull them forward, and I have all of these except for one of the books, which is The Pull of the Stars by Emma Donoghue. I think I did lend that out to somebody, and so I don't have a physical copy of it, but these are the other ones. So there's Minor Detail by Adania Shibli, which is an incredible story told in 2 parts, one from a historical incident of a Palestinian woman that is sort of captured and molested and raped and killed by a group of Israeli soldiers, and which is told from the perspective of one of the leaders of those soldiers, and then a slightly later perspective of a few decades later of a woman that's reading about this incident and trying to research about this woman's life, this woman who has become a minor detail in history. And it's such a unique take on history and culture and politics, and is a book that really made me think and consider things from a different perspective. There's Love After Love by Ingrid Persaud, which we chose as our winner of the Booker Prize, the Costa Book Awards that year. So I have this thing about the Costa Book Awards for the year that's stuck inside, and such a powerful story about 3 different characters that form this loose family unit together, and how they break apart and come back together or aren't able to come back together, and following their story over time, but is told with such a unique, powerful voice, which I found completely compelling and so absorbing, and is a book that really I want everyone to read because I think it is such an amazing, powerful story. There is Summer, the last book in Ali Smith's quartet, seasonal quartet, which brought everything together, and I found so powerful and moving, especially at the time period last summer when I read it, when everything was going on and was capturing our current times as they were happening, but also told a really unique story about this group of characters, some of which we had got to know over the course of the 4 novels. Some of them were new, and gives a really interesting perspective on very divided society, and I think is so powerful and beautifully done. There is A Saint from Texas by Edmund White, the story of 2 twin sisters, of course 2 twin sisters who are very different from each other, and the very different lives they go on to lead from each other, and one lives a very fabulous life in Paris, and the other goes to do charitable work in Central America, and their different experiences over a period of time, and the whole idea of sisterhood and coming together, but almost is about a personality divided and different aspects of our personality, and how we decide to carry out and fulfill the things we want to in our lives, and is such an enjoyable book. I mean, his method of storytelling is so gripping and exciting and wonderful and playful, and so I just enjoy it so much. There's Joyce Carlos's most recent big tome of a novel, Night, Sleep, Death, the Stars, which is an incredible family story told over a period of time, looking at a number of different family members' perspectives, all of whom are very different from each other, and the experience of grief of a woman grieving for her husband, and how she captures that experience of grief, I think is so powerful and moving, and gives a really different perspective on this state which we will all experience as we lose people in our lives that we love, and I think gives such a valuable message about how to continue on past that, but really dramatizes that, I think, in a unique way that gives such an engaging story to it. And there is Shuggie Bain by Douglas Stewart, the winner of the Booker Prize last year, which is one of the most incredible stories I've read about the state of alcoholism, and told mostly from the perspective of a son whose mother is suffering from this, and captures this like state of a nation in Glasgow in Scotland at that period of time, but also this young boy's coming of age story, and so gives this unique take on masculinity, as well as this state of family life, this very like tragic state, which I just found so heartbreaking and moving and powerful. There's Burnt Sugar by Avni Doshi, which I found so personally powerful, of a mother-daughter relationship, which is very difficult, and following that over time as this daughter like reflects on her experiences, but also makes decisions about what to do with her mother, as her mother might be experiencing signs of dementia. And it's such a powerful story, though another very divisive book. I know not everyone loved this, but I thought was incredible and moving. There's Hilary Mantel's amazing end to her trilogy, the Mirror and the Light, which I sort of connect all three books together, since I read them all together over the course of last year, but also just sort of all, they're very much a piece, aren't they? I mean, they all stick together, telling the story of Thomas Cromwell's life and his tragic downfall, working with Henry VIII, and the madness of that whole time period, and captures it in such an amazing way, and is such a amazing like meditation on power. I think that speaks to our current times, as well as capturing this historical period. And then there is XX by Ryan Hughes. I chose a lot of big chunksters for my favorites last year, and this is another big one, which is like around like 1,000 pages long, and is such an innovative story. I mean, on the surface is kind of a science fiction story about a signal that comes from outer space, and a group of tech geniuses that sort of interpret that, and the consequences of that, the very dramatic consequences of that following that story, but is also like a meditation on the evolution of our technology and where we're going as a culture and a society, and but is also a relentlessly, at least for me, was a relentlessly entertaining novel that I was so gripped by, and I was glad it's such a long novel, because it captivated me all the way through, and was really funny and entertaining, as well as insightful and innovative in its storytelling. There's some really wild bits to this, and different kinds of text inside the story, so you're sort of turning the book around as you're reading it, which is so unique and really enjoyable. And again, it's hard for me to choose from these books, which are still so much in my recent memory, but from these 10 I would choose, I think I have to keep 5 of them again. So there's XX, there's The Mirror and the Light, there's also Night, Sleep, Death, the Stars, which is such a powerful novel. I would also want to keep Love After Love by Ingrid Persaud, and Minor Detail. And so those are the 5 I'm going to keep for now. And now I have the task of looking over all of these books that I've saved, and what I want to pick as my 10 favorites. And this is when it gets really, really difficult. So I'm going to stack them all up and consider them against each other. Oof. And there are 19 books in total that I've saved for the moment. So I've not done very well so far at whittling them down. So I'm gonna have to be really brutal now and just go with my gut instinct of what are my absolute favorites, and that the 10 that I think stand out and that I want everyone to read, but that are also ones that mean so much for me personally, that I just feel like I want to hold on to these books forever and ever. cover because yeah, they're so meaningful to me. And I'm not going to put these books in any particular order because I think if I tried to order them and you know, sort of rank them against each other, that it would be like another hour-long video, and nobody needs that. But the first one I want to pick out is Washington Black by S.E. Dugin, because yeah, this story has just stuck with me so much. And I know some people had some issues with it and kind of dismissed it as a kind of like adventure story, which it is very adventurous, but is also a tale of like personal evolution and an individual who's very gifted trying to find their place in society when a lot of that society is working against them, and how the author traces that journey, I think is so moving. It's just and heartbreaking, but also beautiful, that it's just stuck with me so much. And like I said, that particular scene is just captured my imagination and has really stuck with me and made me think about things from a different perspective. So yeah, Washington Black definitely stays in. Next, I would also choose Winter by Ali Smith because I think this is, out of the seasonal quartet, this is one that does really stand out for me so much as one that's an entertaining story, but is also capturing the state of the nation in the time in which it was written, and so is an amazing portrait of our society, but also the way it converses with literary history and our traditions, but a very particular story about family life and political activism and all of these issues that I think it dramatizes so well in this story. So I mean, I don't like to rank the seasonal quartet, in which I think are the best novels, because to me they're all very much a piece, but if I'm going to choose one that I want to highlight, it would be Winter. Also, I want to keep The Parcel by Anosh Irani, because this is such an amazing story. It's one I wish a lot of other people would read. It's one that I was like really championing, even though I think it didn't get like any prize attention or I didn't see that many people talking about it, but which I think is such a powerful book and such an original story. And it's very challenging for a reader to as you grow to sympathize with this character and this narrator, because she's doing a terrible thing, but gives you such a different perspective on things and society and all of these really big issues, but does so in like such a unique way. And the method of storytelling I think is so direct and really spoke to me, and so it's just an incredible book. I'd also definitely want to keep the Years by Annie Ernaux, because this, like I said, this book just gave me such a different perspective on all these issues to do with history, and so I think it has really changed my point of view and how I think about things, like both how a book can be told and how you can mix these different genres to tell a really unique story, but also the way I conceptualize and think about these issues to do with society and history, that is such a powerful, like, game-changing book. I also have to put in Ducks Newburyport by Lucy Ellmann, because this book is just incredible. It's such an absorbing, amazing experience, and the way, the style she chose to tell this, I think suits the story so well and perfectly encapsulates this point of view at a particular period of time, and is so innovative and fun and incredible. It's just, I think this is a book that's going to last through the ages, and people are going to be reading it in centuries to come. Another book which is so innovative and that I think is really going to last around for many, many years is Lincoln in the Bardo by George Saunders. Incredibly unique reading experience, so playful and funny, as well as disturbing and dark and like creepy. There's some really creepy elements to it. I mean, it all takes place in a cemetery, so definitely very creepy, as well as very psychologically insightful, and does also give a very different view of history and perspective and of personal and sort of like celebrity, these like celebrated personas that we think of in a particular way, and we sort of fix in history in this way, but giving a very personal take on that. And so giving you, a different viewpoint on figures that are celebrated and why we honor them. And but is also an amazing take on grief and memory and all of these big issues. Another book, like I talked about, that gives such an amazing perspective on grief is Night Sleep, Death, the Stars, which I'll dig out from all these books. And this I think this novel is just so powerful and so epic, and also very playful in some of its storytelling. There are some bits to it which are really comic and meant to be comic. It's not just serious, even though it's looking at these big serious issues to do with prejudice and different, like, economic differences in society and artistic aspirations, but also the process of grief and how and the strength of family coming together in times of desperate need. I think it's such a powerful book, and a book I don't want to lose because, like I said, it has such powerful personal meaning for me, is Paul Takes the Form of a Mortal Girl, and another book that I think is so original that I wish a lot of other people would read, because it is this sort of modern day Orlando tale, by Virginia Woolf, but also a story that looks at our society in such a unique and different perspective, and the changes of society at that time of, like, the 90s going forward, and so sort of a time capsule of that experience, but also captures, I think, a period of time when there was a lot of change, and does so through a personal perspective that I just found so moving and enlightening. A book that I think is so technically perfect in the way that it's written and the way that it tells its story, but also gives this much, like, bigger message about society in the world, is Ghostwall by Sarah Moss, and it just stands out for me so highly as such a brilliant book that I think deserves so much more attention, even though a lot of people have read it and is a slightly divisive book in some people's opinion, but is such a short book that I think it's worth going back to and worth rereading, because there's so much to get out of this story and this novel. And finally, my 10th choice, I have to make a really difficult decision between all of these books now of one that I want to highlight and save, but I think it would be Love After Love by Ingrid Purcell, because this story in this book just, like, broke my heart, but also made me laugh so much. And I didn't mention before, but there are so many funny aspects of this book which are really, like, lighthearted and playful looks at our relationships with each other, but also these little, like, details about everyday life, and she finds a real playful side to that, but also these heartbreaking moments and decisions, and how we can fall out with each other over things and hold these grudges over long periods of time, but also how we can reconcile with each other and come back together. That I just think it is such a beautiful story and real mesmerizing storytelling. So those are my choices, and here we are. I will pile them all up next to each other. These are the 10 books, my 10 favorites. Whoa. From the past 5 years, see if I can balance them all together. These are the ones that really stand out for me. So I hope you've enjoyed this little trip down sort of memory lane for me, looking at the past 5 years of reading. I'd love to know your thoughts about any of these books that I've talked about. If you have any standout favorites from the past 5 years that you would really champion and wish that everyone would read, or at least try to read, let me know about those in the comments below, and we can have a chat about them. But thank you for watching. Thank you for watching me if you've been watching me for, whether it's been just a week or for the past 5 years. Thank you for following my channel, my thoughts, and my reading experience. I've been so flattered that so many people have been interested in following my reading journey, but I've really enjoyed getting feedback, but also suggestions of other books to read. It's been so wonderful meeting so many different people over this this period of time on booktube, and so hopefully that'll continue for some time to come. But yeah, thank you for watching this long video and me going through this self-indulgent task of picking out my favorite books from the past 5 years. But I hope you're reading good things, and as always, I will speak to you again soon. Bye bye.